What's going on, guys? Hexadaze here. In today's video, I wanted to cover the basics of team building in Zenless Zone Zero to help you prepare for the launch of the game. Teams in ZZZ consist of a total of 3 characters. While characters in this game do have certain roles that they fill, this is not your typical DPS, support, healer combo that you encounter in many team-based games. This makes team building in ZZZ a little less intuitive for new players. I want to give you guys some recommendations for strong teams at launch, as well as provide you with the tools to come up with team compositions on your own so that you can utilize the characters you do have in the best way possible. In this video, I'll be covering agent specialties, additional abilities, example team compositions, Bangboos, and endgame stage design. As a disclaimer, all information in this video is based on CBT3 and is subject to change, so take it with a grain of salt. Without further ado, let's get into the video. The most important aspect of team building in Zenless Zone Zero are the roles that each character plays in a team. ZZZ refers to these roles as agent specialties, and there are a total of 5 agent specialties in the game at launch, including attack, stun, anomaly, support, and defense. Let's talk about what each of these specialties do best and how they fit into a team. Attack agents are skilled at dealing massive damage directly through attacks and fill the main DPS role. These agents will typically have high base attack and scale with stats like crit rate and crit damage. We should be seeing a total of 6 attack units at launch, with both 4 and 5-star options, and Billy being given out for free to all players. Stun agents are focused on accumulating daze quickly to stun enemies. Each enemy has a daze bar below their health bar that, when full, will cause the enemy to be stunned, rendering the enemy unable to move, increasing damage taken, and allowing chain attacks to be triggered. Stunning enemies is essential to maximizing DPS. Not only do dazed enemies take 150% increased damage, chain attacks are also very powerful for team DPS. If you'd like more information on these mechanics, go check out my combat guide linked on the screen. We should be seeing a total of 3 stun units at launch, which include 2 5-stars and 1 free 4-star Anbi. Anomaly agents are skilled at accumulating anomaly buildup to trigger attribute anomalies. In other words, these agents are great element appliers. Attribute anomalies have different effects depending on the elements applied. For example, fire agents inflict burn. Burn deals continuous fire damage, and organic enemies are interrupted while burned. While physical agents inflict assault and flinch, assault interrupts enemies and deals massive physical damage, and flinch increases days the target takes for a period of time. There's only a single anomaly unit at launch who is a standard 5-star, so not everyone will be able to fill this role immediately. Support agents are skilled at providing buffs to allies and improving the team's combat efficiency. With so few supports currently in the game, it is difficult to say everything this role may entail in the future, so we will have to wait and see. There should be 3 support units at launch, 2 4-stars and 1 5-star, with Nicole being given out for free. Defense agents are skilled at unleashing counterattacks and improving survivability. At launch, Ben is the only defense unit available, so this role may not be critical early game. With all available roles mentioned, it seems to me that the typical ZZZ team will consist of an attack unit, a stun unit, and then a flex unit, which could be a support, defense, or anomaly agent. Your stun unit will be on field to quickly apply daze and stun enemies. When enemies are stunned, damage is increased, and you can bring your DPS on field to maximize damage during this window. The flex spot will likely be a support at launch, such as Nicole, who can provide crowd control and defense shred. That said, there's a fairly small roster of characters at launch, so expect the meta to certainly shift over time as more units are available. So with the discussion of agent specialties out of the way, let's get into some of the other things to consider when putting a team together, the first of which are additional abilities. Each character has what is referred to as an additional ability as part of their core skill. Additional abilities are granted when another character in a squad shares the same attribute or faction. As previously discussed, attributes simply refer to the elemental type of the character. Factions are lore-based and allow for bonuses without running mono-elemental teams. As of CBT3, there are a total of 6 factions with playable characters. This consists of the Cunning Hares, New Eridu Public Security, Bellabog Heavy Industries, Victoria Housekeeping Co., Hollow Special Operations Section 11, and Obel Squad. With the number of playable characters in each faction ranging from 1 to 4, some agents will have a much easier time being paired on teams with agents from the same faction. In addition to factions, there are also 5 attributes with playable characters. These include physical agents, fire agents, ice agents, electric agents, and ether agents. All attribute types have at least 3 playable characters at launch, aside from ether, which will launch with just Nicole until we get the limited banner for Juyan. When the additional ability of an agent has been activated, the character selection menu will show smiley faces next to each character. The buffs gained from these additional abilities are definitely not insignificant. For example, when Ellen deals ice damage, subsequent ice damage increases by 3% for 10 seconds, which can stack 10 times and the duration can be continuously reset. In other words, Ellen is able to gain a 30% ice damage buff, which is comparable to the damage gained from a 4-piece disc drive set. In another example, when Anby's dodge counter hits an enemy, she gains an extra 7.2 energy, which can be triggered every 5 seconds. This helps Anby utilize her EX skill more frequently, which is a major source of Daze application. And finally, when Billy uses a chain attack, the damage of his next ultimate is increased by 50%, which can stack up to 2 times. These are just a few examples. However, in order to maximize DPS, it is essential that you build teams that allow you to access these additional abilities for all characters. These are essentially free and guaranteed stats. At this point, we've covered the basics of team building. We will talk some more about specific scenarios in a bit, but I first wanted to talk about the free team that everyone will get while playing through the early part of the story and explain why this team works so well. Very shortly after starting the game, you'll get access to Anby, Billy, and Nicole, which will serve as your base free-to-play team. Anby is a stun agent with the electric attribute who's from the Cunning Hares faction. Billy is an attack agent with the physical attribute from the Cunning Hares faction, and Nicole's a support agent with the ether attribute from the same faction. While none of these agents share the same element, all 3 are from the same faction, therefore the additional ability of all 3 characters will be active when paired. The agent specialties on this team include stun, attack, and support, which seems to be a safe combo for most content. As the stun agent, Anby will deal daze to enemies to inflict stun, Billy will DPS the enemy down while stunned as an attacker and main DPS, and Nicole will provide support by grouping enemies and shredding defense with her core skill. While this team certainly works together and is quite effective at clearing all story content, there are not any significant synergies that make this team a best-in-slot option. However, with such a small cast of characters available at the launch of the game, many free-to-play teams may look similar to this example. After discussing the default free-to-play team, let's take a look at a couple examples of pairings with strong synergies that you can run at launch and what makes these teams work so well. First, let's look at an ice damage team consisting of Ellen, Sokaku, and Lycon. Here, Ellen is our main DPS as an attack agent, Sokaku is our support agent, and Lycon is our stun agent. Sokaku is the default ice support unit at launch. When she performs her flying flag skill, she's able to grant her teammates an attack buff based on her base attack, as well as increase the entire team's ice damage by 15%. As you unlock additional copies of this character, she will be able to further reduce ice enemy resistance. Lycon is the stun character in this team, dealing high amounts of daze to enemies. His additional skill also allows him to increase the target's stun damage multiplier by 35%, effectively granting the entire party a 35% damage buff while enemies are stunned. Ellen is an all-around amazing ice DPS that deals a high amount of damage and benefits from the buffs provided by both Sokaku and Lycon when all their additional abilities are active. Furthermore, with all ice attribute agents on this team, uptime on freeze and shatter will be very high. Frozen enemies are immobilized and take increased crit damage, and Shatter deals very high damage. This is all around one of the strongest teams at launch. Another example of a very strong pairing is a fire team consisting of Kaleda and Ben. Ben and Kaleda have a unique interaction that no other characters currently have in the game at this time. When these two are on the same team, Kaleda will deal coordinated attacks for her EX skill and ultimate skill alongside Ben. When this happens, the damage and daze multiplier on each of these skills is effectively doubled. Not only does this increase team DPS, but it makes Kaleda a very strong daze unit. While I don't necessarily believe that this pairing will be meta at this time, it is an example of the base of a team with a high level of synergy. Pairing these two with Soldier 11, who is a fire attack agent and a main DPS, will unlock all characters' additional abilities, and the team will be able to maintain a high uptime on burn to apply fire damage over time to enemies. One thing we haven't talked about but could be considered an essential aspect of team building are Bangboos. Bangboos are a type of companion similar to elves in Honkai Impact 3rd and serve as the 4th character slot in a team. Bangboos have an active skill which is performed regularly on a cooldown, an additional ability which is a buff that is only activated if characters with certain attributes are in the team, and a chain attack which can be used during QuickTime events. Additional abilities for Bangboos are just like they are for your character's core skills. Because of this, Bangboo selection will likely be informed by your party composition and the Bangboos that you have available. For example, Penguaboo's additional ability requires 2 ice attribute agents on the team. When this requirement is met, the Bangboo's chain attack will inflict 120% more anomaly buildup. This Bangboo also only deals ice damage with its active skill and chain attack, and is mostly locked into running on ice teams. Cryboo is an identical Bangboo, but for fire teams. Some Bangboos are not tied to pure mono elemental teams. For example, Butler provides energy to on-field characters with its active skill and deals physical damage with its chain attack. When Butlers run with a character from the Victoria Housekeeping Co-faction, their active skill will generate 25% more energy. So as long as you can fulfill the faction requirement, Butler is a pretty generically useful Bangboo that can be used on any team, making them pretty versatile. This is just a few examples of many. Everyone will get access to a Bangboo for free, which is a completely generic one that can be used on any team with an attack agent. The final item to consider when putting together teams, and the last thing I wanted to touch on in this video, are specific stage buffs and enemy weaknesses and resistances. Shiyu Defense is the definitive endgame mode in Zenless Zone Zero, which is nearly identical to Hollow Zero and Honkai Star Rail, and very similar to the Spiral Abyss in Genshin Impact. Each stage of Shiyu Defense will have a stage buff referred to as a stable node. These can be as specific as increasing ice anomaly buildup rate and shatter damage, or as general as increasing anomaly buildup rate and anomaly damage for any element type. On top of this, all enemies also have weaknesses and resistances to different attributes. Certain characters will be significantly more effective when they have the attribute which counters the enemy they are fighting. Finally, enemies have vulnerabilities which are completely independent of elemental weaknesses, with organic enemies being vulnerable to burn, machine enemies being vulnerable to electric, and ether enemies being vulnerable to ether. Applying an attribute anomaly to the corresponding enemy will cause them to be interrupted, allowing you to get out more DPS and avoid taking damage for a brief time. With a limited character roster at launch and limited resources to build up characters, these stage buffs and enemy weaknesses will influence team building. For example, I may choose to run 2 physical attack characters on the same team to ensure I maximize physical damage and anomaly buildup, because I don't have a physical stun or physical support character to run in place of a second main DPS. Or I may forego receiving an additional ability in order to ensure I have multiple elements covered to fully exploit enemy weaknesses. As the roster of characters fill out and we can expand the number of characters we have built, teams will likely become much more focused. Well, that's all I have for you on this one. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. If you found this video useful and you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. I'll be releasing more videos leading up to the release of the game and plan to cover the game moving forward. I'll see you soon for the next video. Peace.